Good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome all of you in our library space here at Kumaraswamy Hall to tonight's edition of Uncovering Urban Legacies, Stories of Mumbai Precincts. We are looking back on several episodes of this successful series, each spotlighting one of Bombay's iconic precincts, exploring its historical significance, architectural splendor, diverse cultural impressions, and culinary landscape, showcasing Mumbai's multicultural fabric and cosmopolitan character. Tonight, this exploration will be focusing on Colaba, so Assad kept the best for the last edition. This series of events is particularly close to our heart because it addresses one of the main areas of the activities of the Goethe Institute Max Müller I Mumbai here for many, many years, the exploration of the city through art, architecture, city planning, literature, science, and the voices of the numerous communities calling Mumbai a home. Since this will be, at least for the moment, the last event of this series in the current venue, I would like to take the opportunity to say thanks again to all of our partners and collaborators. First of all, Assad and his wonderful team of Avid Learning, but also we're very happy to join hands with a lot of other partners like the Kalagoda Association, ST Plus Art, Walkitecture, and X and Zero. Also big thanks to our guests on stage tonight who are sharing their insights and stories with us. And now I would like to hand over to Assad to give you an introduction of our panel tonight and the topic. I wish all of you an interesting and insightful evening. Thank you very much. Assad, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Bjorn, for this wonderful introduction and your warm support and collaboration. This will be, I think, our 5th episode of this series. And also a special thank you to Jayashree Joshi, who heads up the library and information at the Goethe Institute, for always collaborating with us. And we've been working with her for many, many years. You know, Colaba has fascinated me since I was young, drawing me in with its vibrant streets and architectural mix that both remembers the past and welcomes the future. I had moved to Colaba with my parents a few years before I left for the US, and on my return in 2010 we chose this precinct to call home, and we're very happy about it. Beneath its lively surface, Colaba has a complex history. It's one known for its edgier undercurrents, gambling, drugs, even drew figures in like Gregory David Roberts, Shantaram. This rich, sometimes turbulent past gave Colaba a raw, textured identity, unlike any other neighborhood in Mumbai. Yet it's precisely these complexities woven into its history that makes Colaba's transformation so remarkable. Today, it's a prime spot for every tourist's itinerary, the cultural and commercial capital of Mumbai, with an energy that reflects the city's dynamism. In 2021, we launched Uncovering Urban Legacies that focused on small yet influential communities woven into the city's fabric. We dwelled into the rich legacies of the Iranian, the Jewish, the Portuguese, the Chinese, and so on. This year, we shifted our focus to precincts, areas of heritage and cultural value that create a sense of place, a collective identity, and a feeling of pride for its residents. Tonight, we're delighted to bring you the 5th installment of the series, and to the task at hand. Avid Learning in collaboration with the Goethe Max Müller Bhavan, Kalagoda Association, Start, Walkitecture, X and Zero presents Uncovering Urban Legacies, Stories of Bombay's Precincts, Colaba. Please welcome our panel of experts, founder Apli Mumbai and member of the Mumbai Maritime Museum Society, Vice Admiral I.C. Rao. CEO and MD Ace Productions, Numero Uno Productions, Rael Padamsi. Author Shabnam Minwala. Co-founder, The Food Matters Group, Gauri Devidayal. And co-founder, Start Foundation, Arjun Bhal. Arjun's flight is late. He will be joining us in about 10 minutes. He's just on his way here from the airport. So before that, we have Nikhil, who is going to be our moderator, Principal Architect, NM Associates, and founder of Walkitecture, Nikhil Mahashur. Nikhil is going to start the evening with a small presentation, and then we are going to invite the panel on for the discussion. This evening's panel is going to be followed by a specially curated walk in Colaba on Saturday, the 16th of November at 8 a.m. Yes, you heard, 8 a.m. Led by Nikhil, the special attraction being Starts Foundation's new mural done by Gangubai and Merrill at the Sassoon Dock. So if you're interested, I think the QR code was there, or you can sign up at the desk at the entrance. Thank you all for being here, and over to you, Nikhil.
Hi, good evening. Thanks, Asad, for this. I'm going to just run through a quick presentation so I can talk about the architecture, because I realized that the only thing missing from the esteemed panelists is architecture. We've got everything covered this time. We've got literature, we've got theatre, we've got art, we've got the armed forces as well. And so what I'm going to do is take you through a little bit of the architecture. My tryst with Colaba has been, of course, when we were in college, I was at Jai Hind, so going to Colaba was more about eating than architecture. And then slowly it became, when I went into architecture college, we were not paid that much as interns when we started off. So it was Gokul, where the entire gang went through. So Colaba was always seen the food part in my life. Soon enough, when I kind of grew a little in terms of architecture and realized the layers that it has, even in terms of architecture as well as on the whole, I realized what a wonderful place it was. And now, more and more because of Gauri, now that we're doing the walks with her, and Asad because of the talks, I'm learning more and more of all these precincts day by day. And I think Colaba is one of the best, most eclectic architecture, and it's not possible to kind of show it in 4 or 5 minutes, but I'll still try, and I'll be very quick just to give a face to what we're talking about today. Colaba was the topmost island in the 7 islands of Bombay, and it was divided into the lower Colaba and the upper Colaba, where upper Colaba was where the cantonment is. I've got a few maps to kind of indicate that, and you'll see how thin the strip of Colaba was. Everything other than that is reclaimed. So when you look at the old Bombay, these were the 7 islands, and everything around that has been reclaimed fully or partially. And you'll see what a tiny strip of beautiful land was Colaba. And every book that talks about Colaba, and including Shabnam's book about Colaba, talks about how romantic the suburb is, how romantic the precinct is. And it talks about how the cantonment area was there, and then you had the railway station, and how when people got off the railway station, they took their chariots, and you had sea on either side, and then you had these palm groves and coconut groves, and then you went to the other side of Colaba. In a sense, it's also been, of course, the cantonment area, but essentially has been the land of the Kolis, and that's how it's also got its name. It was Kolabhat, which is meant to be the haven of the Kolis, and that's why now it's been corrupted into calling it Colaba. If you realize and you look at Colaba, and you'll see from this bit of island, it's actually turned into what it is now, and you'll see the grey portions is the activity that the Bombay Improvement Trust did. So all the tall buildings that you see, and I'm not talking about the 20-storied and the 30-storied, but I'm talking of the ground and the 4 stories, were the effect of the plague that happened in 1896. Thereafter, the Bombay Improvement Trust took over Colaba and then started building land for construction to happen, and all the buildings that you see, which are not the heritage buildings, not the Gothic buildings, and mostly the Art Deco buildings, were the advent of the Bombay Improvement Trust that started off building Colaba to what it is today. The most important, every time you think of Colaba, the first thing that comes to your mind is the Colaba Causeway. The colonnaded Colaba Causeway has always been the most important part, whether it's shopping or whether it's eating. Of course, when you talk about architecture, the first thing that comes to your mind is the Gateway of India. But in a sense, it's always the Colaba Causeway. But Colaba Causeway actually renewed Colaba to what it is. And as Asad pointed out, it's been gentrified so many times that before the Colaba Causeway came, in the 1600s and 1700s, Colaba was only a hunting ground. Most of the Britishers used it as a shikar area where they were bored of the fort, so they went in for their entertainment. There were so many trees there that they started actually hunting in Colaba. So no one really bothered into making Colaba one of the most important districts at that time. time. But the Colaba Causeway did that. It was imperative that the causeway was built between the first and the second island, which was the Old Woman's Island and Colaba. The reason was that there were a lot of people that were crossing over either to go to the Afghan church or to go to the Colaba Agyari, and all of them were actually perishing because of the rocks between the two. And then it was imperative that to cross over, or for the British to have land usage in Colaba, the causeway was to be built. And in 1838 they made this causeway, and you can see the older photos and you'll realize what Colaba was before the causeway. You can see the St. Thomas Cathedral in the distance, and you'll see the Colaba Causeway from the Old Woman's Island coming right into Colaba. And it's hard to believe what you see now. What you see now is only a crowded street, but if you look at it, and this is just in the 1830s, and you'll realize what Colaba was. And when you look at it, you'll realize what Colaba Causeway really did for the island. Again, the colonnaded path of Colaba Causeway, this is when Colaba Causeway really started off. So 1890s is when Colaba Causeway was the most crowded place. So if you read about Colaba Causeway, and you'll realize that Colaba Causeway was so crowded because everyone that came into Bombay wanted to go to Colaba Causeway because of the cotton market there. So you had the trams coming in, which you can see. You had Colaba railway station, which was where Bhadwar Park was. So you had the train lines running to Colaba. Anyone who docked and came up at Gateway of India or at the Wellington Pier at that time, wanted to do business, would come to Colaba Causeway. Imagine coming with your chariots from, say, Surat or Ahmedabad to do business. You would enter Bombay and then come to Colaba Causeway. So everyone who came to Bombay was literally coming to Colaba Causeway, and that is why Colaba Causeway was the most crowded road in the city. And it's very obvious when you look at its architecture. The architecture of Colaba Causeway is nothing great compared to the buildings at the back. When you look, if you go to the left and the right and you see the streets parallel to it, you will see what lovely architecture there is. There's Gothic on one side, there's Edwardian on one side, there's Art Deco on the other. But when you stand at Colaba Causeway, there are very few buildings of note on Colaba Causeway, and that's because real estate wasn't as expensive on that street because it was one of the most crowded places in the city. Of course, religious structures were always there. If you go Colaba Causeway is dotted with a lot of mandirs as well. There's one of the most important Koli mandir is the Kharab mandir, which is right next to Colaba police station. And if you want to really read a nice account of it, then you must grab Shabnam's book, because she's really written a lovely article on that. One of my favorite structures, or two of my favorite structures, is the Wesley Church, which looks like a very old vintage cathedral in one of those old English towns. And of course there's an economical church, which I always call it the economical church, because it's the Bowen Methodist Church, because the Methodist community wasn't as rich as the Roman Catholics, and that's why they showed it in their architecture. It wasn't one of the grandest churches, but it's got everything that a church has. It's got a lovely spire, it's got those lovely rose windows, but it's actually reduced to be very economical. But then comes one of my favorite churches, which is the Afghan church, and the way it's restored recently by Kirtida Unwala, I think it's really beautiful. And if you all can all go and catch a look at it, I think it's really done up well. So we're now, the Colaba Causeway was 1838, and now we're in the 1850s when this church was built. And the stained glass is beautiful. And the spire was added a little later in 1965. So if you look at old photos of the Afghan church in 1858, you'll see that it doesn't have the top spire, and it's without that, because 11 years later the spire was added. The Sassoon docks then came in 1875. So you're seeing Colaba slowly and gradually becoming the district or the precinct that it is today. And in 1875, of course, David Sassoon decided to build it, and we'll hear more about the Sassoon docks, because now, of course, the Maritime Society is heavily involved with the Sassoon docks, and of course we have now the Start Foundation doing so much for Colaba within the Sassoon docks. Soon enough, in 1869, when the reclamation around the Colaba Causeway happened, you had the Wellington Pier that was there, that was built to actually regulate the cargo activity that was there. The Gateway of India came much later, and if you see, at the spot of the Gateway of India was actually a pagoda-like structure that was there. And every time they say that the Queen was welcomed with the Gateway of India, and if you look at photos, you will see that it was only a plaster of Paris structure, because every time a VIP comes and something is made for the VIP, they're actually not building the building, they're only laying the foundation stone. So if you go back and see photos of welcoming the Queen, you'll realize that it's only been just a plaster of Paris pagoda. But thereafter, when they extended this portion and they reclaimed all this land, you had this lovely pier being built with the Gateway of India there, and two of the most iconic structures. One is the Taj Mahal, and then the gateway right in front. But before the gateway came up, or before the Taj also came up, you had a lovely road at the back, which is the Merweather Road. And if you walk by, you'll see there are two things that are distinct there. They're lovely Edwardian facades right there. And you'll have a bunch of trees, which are trees that you won't really find anywhere else, because these were the trees that the British also got. So Colaba has not only been a place where we have come as settlers, but even the trees were settlers. They were all brought from, I think it's also there in your book, and you've also written about it. And they were all copper pods that came in. So if you walk there in December or November, you'll find that the entire street is actually laden with pink and yellow flowers. And I doubt it anywhere else in Bombay, you'll have those lovely flowers on the streets. The Edwardian facades are something that I love, and every time we do a walk with Max Street, I always make sure that we do more of the Edwardian facades, because we all know how beautiful the Taj is, and everyone knows about the Taj. But the Edwardian facades are something that really catch my eye, and if you look at them, the lovely arcades, simple Edwardian, when I say, is take a neoclassical building and then reduce it to the Edwardian architecture that's there. The lovely Indo-Sarsing marvels that are there, two of them, of course, which we all know. And then we have the Majestic Hotel that's there. We have the 10 jewels that were there. I'm going to take just a minute and I'm going to wrap up. I'm just going to quickly show you these lovely buildings. And this is one of my favorites, which is the Evelyn House. Cuff Parade is the lovely Baroque bungalows that we still have, and this is what we're going to see on the walk. So if you love Baroque architecture, we're going to see 90% of Baroque buildings during the walk on Saturday. And if you look at them, you'll see how heavily decorated they are. Just one quick lovely photo of, this is the Brady bungalows, and this is the Colaba station, and this is the Cuff Parade that's there. So if you see, this was how Colaba actually ended up and towards the end. The Art Deco buildings, of course, we can't do a presentation without Dhanraj Mahal and the Regal Cinema. And if you look at it, the Art Deco of Colaba is much, much prettier than the Marine Drive, because it wasn't really built as a whole. Marine Drive came up very quickly. You know, you had 100 buildings being built at one point. But the Colaba, I think there was more love that was built in the Art Deco of Cuff Parade. Of course, now this is what's happened to Cuff Parade, but in a good way. But we still have a large number of those Gothic buildings. But to discuss more of it, I'm going to call our esteemed panel on stage. Hi. So I'm going to ask you the first question. So, Vice Admiral Rao, you've had an illustrious career in the Navy, serving as the Chief of Material from 1988 to 1993. Can you give us an insight into Colaba's naval history, sharing some key highlights of its role in shaping Mumbai's maritime history?
Colaba was an island, one of the 7 of Bombay, and it was surrounded by rocks. The rocks were visible only at low tide, and high tide they were not visible. This is a recipe for disaster, because you could not approach Colaba by boat. The only entrance to Colaba was from a little walkway from the main Bombay island into Colaba. So initially nobody came to Colaba to live. It was a jungle, and it was used by the coolies, and it was Colabat, as they said. The first interesting date is when the Portuguese purchased this whole of Bombay Islands, including Colaba, in I think 1564 or so. But they concentrated on the main Bombay Island. Then it was transferred by the Portuguese to the British, everyone knows. and around 1671. And the first time when somebody took an interest in Colaba was when the governor, Ongier, decided that Colaba would be used for the defense of Mumbai. So the first thing they did was that there is a small island, Oyster Rock, where they garrisoned it in 1682 to protect Bombay against pirates. So they put guns there, and they also built a small tunnel from the battery commander's house in Colaba to the island, where they could take ammunition, guns, and it was manned from 1682 almost till today as a garrison, but now no longer pirates, but thereafter other guns were placed in Colaba for the defense of Bombay. Because no boat could go there, it was used as a recreational area. It became an open land, and people started using this as you mentioned, for recreation. But it also meant that when the British immigrants came here, they all suffered very badly from malaria and dysentery. So this became a big problem, and there were occasions where a shipload of immigrants, 1/3 of them died in the first year. So the first item which took place was that they were sent to Colaba for recuperation. There was a Seamen's Hospital built, I think, in around 1760s. That hospital became a military hospital in 1863. And that is exactly where INHS Ashwini is now from 1951. So that has been for rest and recuperation since the 17th century. The defense of Bombay also meant that guns were placed all around, including in the First World War, the Second World War, and even in the 1971 war, there was a missile placed in Bombay to defend Bombay. So that has always had a military character. And in 1923, the gun house was built. That was for the battery commander, a major. Now a lieutenant general lives there. And he had 3 small battery commanders who were captains. Those were the 3 bungalows on Henniker Drive. The next event of interest is that one of the professors of Elphinstone College decided that Colaba was a very good place to measure geomagnetism because it has certain characteristics. It has very little interference. There's no iron here. It's pure basalt. So in 1826, he set up a station for the measurement of geomagnetism. This became, he was such a dedicated person, and he appointed one Nurmai Musabhoy as the manager, and he made it world famous. And it is one of the few places in the world which has got continuous magnetic signatures recorded for over 100 years. Only thing is that in 1900, when the electric trams came, those were DC voltage, and they were expected to interfere with the very delicate magnetic readings they were taking. So this shifted to Alibag. But the institute is still there, is where the Colaba observatory is now. That location, before the observatory came up, it had a maritime use. Firstly, they put a tower, a wooden tower, during the Portuguese time. This was renewed and repaired, and it became a watchtower for looking at the ships coming in. Then they found that there were so many mishaps of ships foundering on Prongs Reef that they made a lighthouse there. Even that lighthouse didn't prevent ships running aground and hitting the rocks. So in 1875, Prongs Reef Lighthouse was built, and at that time it was one of the largest lighthouses in the world. So because a Portuguese ship with a vice admiral on board foundered and he died. There was another tragedy where a passenger ship broke up on the rocks and 150 people died. That was considered a big disaster, and they continued to have problems. And in fact, even today, it is hazardous. And as recently as 2022, that's 2 years ago, a boat went and capsized, hit the rocks, capsized, and one of the passengers died. So it is, and if you look at the charts around the west of the Colaba Causeway, you will find several wrecks marked there, which are visible only at low water. At high tide, you could go and hit a wreck and be a wreck yourself. So it's still very much a hazard. But that meant that Colaba was a defense station. Right from the original administration, they decided that Colaba would be a cantonment, and no land was sold to any person for 400 years until everything changed when the causeway, when the reclamation started. Around 1838, I think it started, and it continued till 1861 when but after that, because the cotton exchange, which was actually where the Horniman Circle is now, the cotton depot was shifted because they wanted it near the railways, which is Colaba station. It came here, which is now the main Colaba market area, was the Colaba. It was the cotton green. And that was shifted only in 1923 to where today's cotton green north of Sivri, south of Sivri. So when the causeway was built, everything changed. People came in. Then they found that because of the cotton boom, Sir David Sassoon, he dug up the rocks in where the Sassoon dock is, and it became a thriving export port. And it did so well that the Bombay port, when they built their Princess Dock and Victoria Dock, they could not compete. So they started with nationalizing the Sassoon Dock. So that was nationalization started those days. And that meant that the Sassoon Dock importance decreased, and it became a trooping dock for some time. So there is a historical anecdote which Shabnam has written in a book, where Winston Churchill came and he had a slight mishap where he was hanging on to a ring and his foot he lost his footage and injured his shoulder. I believe that even Horatio Nelson came here, but there is no record of his having come to Colaba. He came at the age of 18 in the 1790s. So once the Colaba Causeway started, the Second World War meant that the upper Colaba was used as a recreational area, and it was when the Navy took over after 47, it was called the holiday camp. So when the Navy people felt that they were staying in holiday camp, they had to change the name to Navy Nagar. Then lastly, I had kept this for the end, that Colaba, Upper Colaba was continued to be a military area, except that there was a lunatic asylum there. It's not been renamed as a US club, that's a different institution now.
Okay, I'm going to jump to theatre now. Rahul, this one's for you. You're a third-generation resident of Colaba and a member of the city's first family of English theatre, with your uncle and father laying the groundwork with the theatre group of Bombay. Now the baton is passed on to you and Kausar. Please tell us about the genesis and development of theatre in Colaba with memorable memories at Kusum Terrace and Bella Terrace.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Yes, you're right. I am a third generation resident of Colaba. My dad and my uncle actually started the English theatre movement in this country. At that time, in the 1940s, you couldn't act in any English play if you were an Indian. And so they thought very strongly about this, especially my uncle. His name was Bobby Padamsi, and he decided to start the theatre group. And they did all kinds of wonderful plays, classics, they did Indian playwrights, they did all, you know, but they started actually in our home, which is Kulsum Terrace. And the reason it's called Kulsum Terrace is that they have 3 terraces on the building. So one of them was used for rehearsals, one was used for the costume department, one was used to make props. So our whole family was involved in this theatre production of, you know, all these lovely, lovely plays, which of course I'm just working on a museum, a virtual museum of my father, and so you'll see it all there. Great, what can I say, memories. Not only that, I think they brought a sense of community, you know, that people who were involved and who wanted to be part of the English theatre movement, and especially they were attached to Xavier's College because they all went there. So they had a dramatic club over there, and everybody was at our home. There were at least 40 to 50 people every evening. My grandmother, whose name is Kulsum, who was actually very, very enterprising, and the reason I bring her up is when you mentioned in the 1930s, you know, there was nobody living there, so my family bought up 10 plots and built 10 buildings over there, but nobody wanted to live in them because there were no people who wanted to actually rent. So they had to really get, you know, it furnished and give them all the white goods. And of course, the rents at that time were ridiculous, and they're still ridiculous. They're almost the same as then. Since so it was it was very, very enterprising. My grandmother was very enterprising, and she used to have all these people over every evening, these young college kids who were, you know, deciding to do theatre, etc. And she would cook for them. So obviously everybody came, you know, Jason de Cunha, Sylvie de Cunha, just about everybody in the theatre who you can think of, you know, including my mother, Pearl. So it was a huge gang, and it was the birthplace of English theatre, really. Then it went on to different things, etc. And after, of course, we moved out of that, my father decided to build a theatre in our other home. So it was called Bella Terrace, for those of you who've even been there or not. Just to give you an example, it had a huge terrace, which was the audience, where the audience would sit, and the drawing room was actually the stage. So all our bedrooms were green rooms. It was quite an amazing experience to grow up in a live theatre every day of your life. So there were people acting, there were workshops being held, all kinds of wonderful, wonderful, exciting things. And really, I feel that if that hadn't been, I don't know where the theatre scene today would, you know, have evolved to. It has really helped us a lot in that sense, yeah.
Fantastic, thanks so much. Shabnam, I'm going to ask you a question now. Having been born, schooled, and now choosing to live in Colaba, you've witnessed its many avatars over the years, and you capture these changes in detail in your book. Please share some personal anecdotes that illustrate Colaba's evolution from your childhood memories to its present-day character.
So I'll start with 2 confessions. I'm used to talking to children, so when I see a whole hall of people older than 11, I'm feeling sick with terror. But confession number 2, I was quite an incurious child. So I took it very for granted that my nursery school would be in a church, Wesley Church, and that when I was coloring an apple, purple light would be shining on it through a stained glass window. I took it very for granted that we would be buying tuar dal in the Majestic Hotel, then Sakari Bhandar. I thought life was like this, that you were sent every month to go to Paradise Restaurant and weigh yourself for 10 paisa. And, you know, that my library was a huge tin trunk on Colaba Causeway, where all the ladies of Khushrobag used to get their quota of Mills and Boons, and my mum never bothered to check what I was getting, so I would come home routinely, 9 and 10, with books called Drumbeat of Desire and Purple Passion, and it shaped me in terrifying ways, I expect. But, so that was my Colaba. You know, Colaba was such a small neighborhood, we never left. My granny lived there, we lived there. The murders we were interested in happened down the road. The Ram Leela saleswoman, God bless her, poor thing. She sold me my first maiden form bra. She got hacked to death. And all our mothers whispered, do you think it was the Binny salesman? So it was this kind of neighborhood. I think texture and perspective came to me when I moved away from Colaba to other parts of the world, and I realized that the place I had left behind was unique and special in ways I had not imagined. I thought it was fuddy-duddy, boring, shabby, unpainted buildings. What the hell? I wanted to be in a glamorous place. But I think working on the book on Colaba actually really enriched my world for me. I think, you know, I was looking for mentions of Colaba in old texts, and when I found this letter of this man called John Burnell, good thing that he was a good letter writer, because his description of Colaba is really the first that survives today. In the 1700s, he wrote to his dad, and he said, it's about 2 miles, this place called Colaba, and about 1/3 of a mile across, and it's filled with jackals. And I tried to shoot one there, but they're faster than the wind, and I couldn't kill any. And you know, that in a way gives you this vivid picture of where and how much we've traveled. And I think it also gives you a sense of how much of the world we live in was once water. And I realize now whenever I walk in my neighborhood, 80% of the time I'm walking on water. And I'm imagining those ghost fish feeling quite reluctant and irritated that we've displaced them. I've also realized to my shock and horror that while I proudly say I'm a Colabaite, that actually Colaba ended before my house. I'm an old woman-kar or an old womanite, and I don't like that phrase. So I'm holding on to Colaba. But I think Colaba has, of course, changed, but I feel, maybe I'm wrong and maybe I'm, I'm so hardcore Colaba that I'm refusing to accept it, but I feel it's changed a little less than the rest of the city. I don't know if you agree. The buildings, a lot of them are the same. The eccentric people are there, for sure. For a long time, Firoza Lali walked the causeway, and she was the ballet teacher of, we were not rich enough for me to do ballet, was very, very sad about it, but all my fancy friends went to her. And then, I don't know, Colabaites here, do you all know the man with the silver hair who was everywhere? Wherever you went, he was there.
You called him the walker in your book.
The walker, yes. So he was a spooky man. We'd get onto a bus at one corner of Colaba and get off at the other, and he'd be walking both places. So Colaba was full of these legends. I've mentioned the murders. They were all over. And, it was a place where your mother would send you, say, go to the plastic shop and get a cap for this bottle. And you would obediently go and find a cap for the bottle, because there was a shop with a basket full of caps. So, that was my Colaba. And it's become upmarket relatively. But Colaba's seen many cycles. So, I think we've lost something, we've gained something. And thank you.
Lovely, lovely. It's exactly like how it's in your book. So. Gauri, Colaba has a rich culinary legacy with some iconic spots like Bademia, Leopold, Mondi's and Baghdadi, to name a few. How did Colaba evolve into this food lover's paradise with its blends of Parsi, Catholic and international influences that make up its food history?
So after listening to everyone on the panel, I think I've had the youngest or the sort of smallest amount of exposure to Colaba. It's, I think, over the last 15 years that we have our restaurants there, the Table in Mac Street. But, it's a neighborhood that I have just grown to love, and I've become what's called a Sobo snob, because it's taken us 14 years to open a restaurant in Bandra. So I'm still a big Colaba fiend. But yeah, when I was sort of thinking about how food has been such an integral part of Colaba. It's actually a true melting pot, right? So you've got your Irani cafes, you've got your OG big daddies of Baghdadi, Baremia, and then, of course, Olympia, Keema Pao. You better get there before it runs out in the morning. And then, there was also the Naval and Military Cafe. I don't know how many of you all remember that, but at the corner of behind Regal Cinema, which is now the Table. And I have to tell you a really interesting story that I learned when, sort of learning about Colaba, is that a lot of the corner properties, like Mondi's, Leopold's, Naval and Military, were actually considered, I think, bad vastu. And so they were always the last properties to get, occupied. And I think that's why a lot of the old Iranis, took those properties. And today, they are the most sought after spaces. And, we really lucked out with getting one of them, getting our hands on, what's now the Table. So it's interesting how, the corner property was once considered unlucky, but I think it's been pretty lucky for us. Of course, then there was the whole Chinese revolution. There was Nanking, Mandarin, which was opposite Nanking in Dhanraj Mahal, and then that became Henry Tham's. Nanking closed, I think, in the 90s. It was the place that we used to have our family birthday dinners at, and I still remember it was always sweet corn chicken soup and, fried rice. It was like my favorite, meal to have. And unfortunately, it closed, but, the family obviously opened Link's Pavilion, which is still there today, and it is such an eternal favorite with everybody, with its bright lights in there, and it's sort of, the dark but red, blue, green lights and the little bridge that you cross to get into the dining room, and, of course, Baba Ling is still there and his son. So that's the Chinese influence. Then it came to, of course, the yacht club, where you have a little slice of British India, and you still go in there and you can have your chicken a la Kiev and the mulligatawny soup. So it's still exactly the same. I think they have renovated it, and it's a beautiful property. But you can have a slice of the leftovers of the British there. And then there's the dive bars, Gokul. Again, come down. I think it's 3 generations now. It's a 3rd generation. The daughter's running it. She's my age, and no matter how divey it gets, it's still one of the favorite places. It's where a lot of people go and have a few drinks before they even come to the table sometimes. Of course, you'll find a lot of chefs hanging out there, after service. And right around the corner was Alps, which is now, Kitchen Garden, but that was also a favorite. I think it was a property that was owned by a Jewish man and then got taken over by Mr. Pujari, who then opened Alps. And I think that's also when there was this slight gentrification towards a more European style of restaurant, and so that's when you had Indigo, open, which took over. I think it was Bayside Cafe that used to be in that gorgeous bungalow, and next door was Busaba. I think it was one of the first Thai eateries in Bombay, and these opened around the 90s. Ironically, we now have a restaurant where Busaba once stood, which is Mag Street, and we do these walks with Nikhil from there. And then, of course, you have Alps became Kitchen Garden, Mandarin became Henry Tham's. So that's when you started sort of seeing this gentrification and sort of, European bent. And then, of course, we can't forget the Taj. And, that was your ultimate luxury. And you had the Zodiac Grill, which was infamous for not having any prices on the menu, and you could pay whatever you wanted. These are, I think, the little sort of stories that you keep hearing about properties that are there and, they're still around and that, may not be around anymore, but clearly made an indelible mark on this city. And, you're right that like a lot of Colaba has not changed, and that's what makes it, amazing. You'll still find people going to Bade Mian and popping their trunks open and having the bonnet rather, and having their kebab rolls and on that. So it's a little bit of a time warp, and yes, some of us have come and maybe ruined that, but it is this beautiful time warp that you can keep stepping back into whenever you like, so through its food.
Thanks, Gauri. You're making us all hungry. But yeah, this is also most of our memories of even non-residents, all that you've spoken about, because that's where we all used to hang out, all these places that you've spoken about. Arjun, the next one for you. I'm glad you made it in time. Start has left an indelible mark on the public art space in India, beginning with the Lodi Art District in New Delhi. You then brought this experience to Mumbai, including 2 outstanding festivals at the Dock. Tell us more about this journey. How has bringing Start to Colaba shaped the neighborhood and the local population?
Hi, firstly, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really amazed with all the stories, and a lot of them I didn't know. Really, for us at Start, Colaba and Sassoon-Dock happened by chance. Like everything else in our journey over the last 11 years now, to be precise. Everything's happened by chance, and it was never thought of that we'll be at Sassoon-Dock. And if you want to know the story of how it happened, is also interesting, because we have a friend, Riaz. I mean, I think we all know Riaz over here. And, he had an opportunity at some point, this is about 2005 or 2006, to potentially open something in this beautiful place called Sassoon-Dock. And I had never been to a Sassoon-Dock. My partner, Julia, happened to be in Bombay, and she, Riaz, just by a passing comment said, there's this beautiful space called the Sassoon-Dock. Just to tell everyone, I'm not from Mumbai, and none of us are from Mumbai. We are 5 co-founders from all parts of India, including Rome, but no one is from Mumbai. Mumbai has adopted us, and we have adopted Mumbai. So I want to make that I want to confess that before saying anything. So that passing comment of Riaz saying that, why don't you come check out the docks, had a really big impact, actually. I mean, Julia could have just said, yeah, Riaz, not today, tomorrow, I'm too hungover today, or I have worked too much. It could be anything. Because pre-Sassoon-Dock, mostly our projects were in Bandra, were in Dharavi. We were doing Dharavi, we were doing a lot of projects over there, and in Bandra. I mean, those are the places, and we were collaborating with Celebrate Bandra. I don't know if you guys know, there's a festival called Celebrate Bandra, which is done by the local organization over there. And we had we never had any ambitions towards coming towards Colaba. I personally have grown up in Colaba because my aunt lives here, so I've grown up in Churchgate, so I kind of understand what this was. But Julia went there, and then she came back to Delhi, and she came back with 2 things. One was a lot of excitement, and literally she didn't know how to explain what she saw. And the other thing was a smell, actually. So the smell was actually intriguing, and I was like, let's talk about the smell first. She said, okay, that's something which we'll all have to deal with. We are street art people. We work in the places no one goes to. In fact, our project before the docks was in Delhi at a place called Inland Container Depot, which also happens to be one of the largest landfills in India. And that's the very famous landfill everyone is fighting about and is getting highly popular now in Delhi. It's now a big mountain, actually. And that's where our first project was. So we actually go to places where people don't want to go to. We find it interesting. So anyway, having already worked with smell, I said, how bad can it be, right? I mean, it's all right, we'll go there and we'll work, but now tell us about Sassoon-Dock. And of course, we then Googled, we understood, we saw images, and we asked ourselves, is this even possible? And we had this big man, Riaz, over there. He said, listen, guys, you want to do it? This is for Bombay. Let's do it at Sassoon-Dock. And really, that's how our journey at Sassoon-Dock started. And we had the most fabulous experience after that. We had the most fabulous officers. from the Mumbai Port Trust who believed in this vision, because there was no policy to give it to us. There was no framework to give it to us. They've never done an art show. But one thing they knew that by giving it to us was they would engage the local community, and they would also somehow or the other beautify the space. For them, beautification was an important thing. And we said, okay, let's call it beautification. Let's not even call it an art project if you want to call it beautification. But we're going to work with the community over there, which is the Koli community. And it was pretty interesting and pretty difficult at first, because they saw these aliens coming there and someone suddenly wanting to talk to them and engage with them, and why are people talking? They were curious, they were suspicious. But what started with a difficult conversation became over the weeks and months easier. And we obviously worked a few months before we even started putting one paintbrush on that, because we needed to understand where we're working. We needed to understand, is it okay to work here? Because many a times we've started working places and it's not okay for us to work there, and we quietly retract from it. And 2007 was beautiful. It was the most amazing experience for us working at Sasun. It was also very important to understand this community which lives and thrives there. It was also very interesting to see most of my friends and a lot of people from Bombay who I knew or were acquaintances had never been to Sasun. That was also me pre-2007. And I think that was interesting because we had an opportunity to engage with the locals, work with their materials, understand their practice, challenge the artists to see if they can work with them, and create art, and create something which is for all, which is democratic, which does not need an art study to understand. Of course, if you want to dwell into it and go into the details and you have an intellectual point of view, then you can. But at the same time, it could just be a passerby also enjoying it. And also it was very interesting that people from all across Mumbai, including people from Colaba. In fact, we did a study in the last edition. We had the most amount of people coming from Colaba as well, but people from everywhere came, including Pune, Delhi, and other parts of the city. And that was, I think that was the most beautiful experience for us. It's a free festival. There was no ticketing, so I think that helps. 2007 saw almost 50,000 people coming in, of which we were open about 27 days. 2022, 2023, we had 3 lakh people coming in. I'm sorry for the traffic if it caused. I apologize. We tried very hard. And we were never expecting so many people. And we were very conscious of not disturbing neighbors. But that's what the that's what the numbers were. And it's been the most amazing experience. And it's still there. We do walks over there. In fact, I think over the weekend we're going there, and there's a special project which is coming up on the 1st of December, which is starting on the 1st of December, which I suppose I'm meant to talk about right after. So, I mean, that was my journey about Colaba. I think it's, for us, I love this place. And I feel I belong here, though I've been asked many a times that I'm from Delhi and why am I doing projects in Bombay. I've always taken it with a smile, and I said, because I like doing projects and let's collaborate, it's an open organization. But it's really, this is one of the most special projects we've done. Both the Sasun Doc editions is really our highlights, it's our career highlight. I can retire, honestly, now, if I have to. So,
I think it's taken Colaba and Bombay by storm. So I think it's really done something that's incredible. So congrats to you.
Thank you. I think it's all of us contributing in it. Asad, and I remember all of us have worked. Julia has probably interacted with most of us over here, and it's a team effort. Thank you so much.
Superb. So I'm going to come back to you. You're an inspiration of sorts. You're a polymath, founder of the Maritime Mumbai Society. You even petitioned to save INS Vikrant as a museum. You also run Apli Mumbai. What is the relevance of preserving and conserving a maritime story, especially with reference to Colaba?
There are many visitors who come to Bombay and say that you have turned your back to the sea. And you could go through BKC and Malabar Hill, etc., go back to the airport, and then you said you've been to Bombay. So there are several people trying to do something about it. Apli Mumbai first said that we've got 1,000 acres between Orange Gate, which everyone knows now, and Sivri, which is lying fallow. It is just 7 kilometers from the Mumbai High Court, and it is actually a jungle. You can, many parts of it which were handed over back to the Port Trust, like the Firestone tire became Modi Stone tires. But all those parcels are not contiguous, so it can't be used. So this means that we have the entire eastern waterfront, one bit, thanks to the chairman, which was between 2016 and 20, the eastern waterfront was converted to a domestic cruise terminal. But unfortunately, as soon as it was launched, the pandemic came and there was a halt. Otherwise, we would be going to, we are having a ferry from Mumbai to Goa every day, or every alternate day, which was there 50 years ago. What we had 50 years ago, we don't have now. Similarly, there was a hovercraft in the 1990s from Gateway to Vashi. The hovercraft has disappeared. Once again, the water taxi system has been started from New Bombay to here. There are no takers because we have turned your back to the sea. It would be the best form of transportation if you were to go to New Bombay, and what you've done is built a bridge. So similarly, whenever we've tried to have the Vikrant was supposed to be parked between Sassoon Dock and Oyster Rock. Everything was done. We had the Tata Consulting Engineers report. We had the money lined up. Everything was done. But then suddenly these projects fall off a cliff, never to be heard of again. Similarly, Virat. And so I feel that we're turning our back to Bombay, towards the sea. We must change it.
Thanks, sir. Ryle, I'm going to come to you. Through ACE Productions and your work with the Create Foundation, you've been helping marginalized and less privileged communities through theatre. Please share some insights into the impact of using theatre as a tool for empowerment in Colaba and beyond.
Thank you. We started the first theatre academy in Colaba, exactly in our building on the ground floor, and we had children coming in from all over the city. And it was really exciting because they were so intrigued and so engrossed with what we were doing. And so we decided that we are going to start a foundation. So we started a foundation in memory of my mother and my father, Alec and Pearl, called the Create Foundation. And whatever we do with mainstream children, we also do with children from marginalized societies and challenged children. So they could be visually challenged, they could be mentally challenged, physically challenged, but we believe in integration. So we like to be able to integrate mainstream along with children who are differently abled, etc. And we put them up in the most, wondrous productions. So we've done The Sound of Music, we've done My Fair Lady, we've done Rediscover the Epic on the Ramayana, we've done Mahatma and how important he is in today's context and why children should actually know about it. And of course, these wonderful, wonderful productions have taken place at the NCPA, which is right around the corner. And so they get this huge opportunity to be able to, experience the wonder of the theatre, In fact, tomorrow we're having an art exhibition, we're doing an art workshop with 60 kids from Akanksha. And everybody, I think, knows the NGO Akanksha, and we're doing it at the NGMA, where Sanjukta is going to be working with them, and they're going to be making, it's called Totally Artistic, where they're designing their own tote bags, and they're going to be able to use them and take them away. So that's the whole point of it, we want to be able to engage with civil society to make them understand that there is another, there are other people around us. We have to be more inclusive. When I did one of these productions, I have to tell you, and we had lovely children from the blind school doing the Malkam, and one of the parents who was in the audience, who also had a child from mainstream in the play, turned to me and said, this is the first time my child has seen a blind child. They didn't know that this existed even, because we're such an exclusive society. And the other last thing I wanted to say is that we have collaborated again with the Mumbai police. We're working very, very, very strongly on violence against women and children. And they have initiated a helpline number, 103. Please, everybody remember it. God forbid if you ever need it. Help comes in 10 minutes flat. So we do have this at our, at our fingertips. Nobody knows about it. It's a very well-kept secret. But we're here to share it, and please share it amongst your people. But the reason we're talking about this in reference to Colaba is they're working on a project where we're going to be talking to the men and the women in the bastis. So we're going to take up, Kaf Parade as one of the first ones, and using theatre as a tool to be able to try and get attitudinal change. Because if it doesn't start now, I don't know when it will. So we're all kind of geared up to make 103 and violence against women and children really a big, big project in the next year. Yeah.
Fantastic. I think a round of applause for Rail. I think what you're doing is incredible.
It's for everybody, and everybody has to share. That's the most important.
Fantastic. Shabnam, coming to you. Colaba has gone through ebbs and flows, from a prominent promenade to a dodgy neighborhood. Asad spoke about that in his introduction. And now to a thriving hub of high-end retail and art galleries. Take us through this transformation. What does Colaba's resurgence as a top tourist destination with its unique mix of art and art retail mean for the area's cultural landscape?
So I think one way that I could track the change in Colaba is looking at my grandmother's building. So her building is called Sunny House. My mama still lives there, and it's bang behind the Taj. So when the building came up, they had the sea view, okay?
Telgi's building as well.
So they really were pleased. But then the Taj came and blocked their sea view, and they were even more pleased. They said, oh, fancy neighbor. And my mom as a kid used to go and play in the Taj garden, and life was very comfortable and happy, and everybody was very neighborly. The building itself was very interesting because it was a building that was built by a Maharaja from Gujarat for rental income. And he had planned it, I think, for the British middle class. But what happened was that the growing Indian middle class came and got houses. And not everybody could afford it. My grandmother's family was lucky, grandparents were lucky, and they got the whole flat. But many flats were shared. So just beneath them, there was this flat which was shared by 3 Parsi families. And above them was the Taj dormitory. So the waiters and all used to come and sleep, and the general, one manager type, had one whole room to himself. And my mom used to play with the daughters, and my granny used to be nervous about the people in the dormitory. It was a big thing. So it was very interesting. Right on the ground floor was an Irani restaurant with a man with a very loud voice. And he was still around when we were children. We would only go and shop from him if we had a very sudden visitor, because his Coke was like 5 paisa more expensive than the Coke down the road. But it was a very middle class and, comfortable setup. But as I grew older, I started hating going to my grandmother's house, partly because the Irani restaurant had become a dance bar. It was called Sunrise Dance Bar and was notorious. Okay, years later, I met a police commissioner who said, you didn't have reason to worry. All my undercover agents were there. Because it was the hub of drug trafficking. So I'm not sure whether I should have been calmed or panicked. But it was also the time when all the hippies were streaming into the city. And very often I would enter my Sunny House and that smell would hit you. And it was real, unwashed body and some kind of drug. And I was too small to identify it, but it was the smell which for me was fear. And literally, I think there were 3 or 4 years when I'd have to be escorted into the building like that because I was so afraid the arcades were taken over by drugs and the hippie culture. And I wish I'd been braver. It was so interesting, and I wish I'd observed it better, but the entire neighborhood was extremely seedy by then. There was the famous, there were all the famous bars and discos, the little seedy ones around the area, and a lot of stuff happening. If anybody's read Baumgartner's Bombay, it was really Baumgartner's Bombay that we were living in. And then the new wave came. In the middle, suddenly things sort of toned down, the area got cleaned up, and of course now we see gentrification. So look at my grandmother's building, okay? So all the old people, the 3 Parsi families sold, and it's now an art gallery, a huge and beautiful one. Their neighbor was a Jewish lady. She sold to Telgi, the stamp king. Yeah. The people living above my granny and my mama, very famous artist. So I think in a way the entire neighborhood has changed. Just looking at this one building, you can see the transformation. So the old neighbors, there may be 3 or 4 on the ground floor. Dance bar has gone, of course. I mean, who would waste that property there? Very, very high-end coffee shop, and a shop that is a little, yes, a little strange. Yeah, I always wonder, how do you survive? Who buys your stuff? But they do. So this is the change in Colaba. And another way I'd like to track it is I recently wrote a young adult book called Zen, and it's 2 love stories, 1935 and 2020. 1935, Bori girl Zainab lives in Sargent House, which is about a few buildings away. I've changed the names of the building. But, and her world is the old crumbling cotton green, a scary place, a place of change, but your building is being constructed at that point. I mean, in my head, I could see Kulsum Terrace being built. And now, the 1920s is, of course, our Colaba. But it's very interesting because I spent a lot of time looking at the old Times of India directories and mentioned all the shops and all the dentists' offices and all. And that was also a very swank and happening city at that point. So we, I think, tend to imagine that the city we see now is this upmarket, luxury, good place. But Avon milliners and bonnets and all, they were pretty hip in their own rights. And if you read any account of the city at that point, it's a city of women with pasts. Colaba was a place where, women used to promenade, all these Russian adventurers, princes who'd lost their principalities. So it was an amazingly interesting area that attracted people of all kinds, and I think it has come a full circle and has returned to that now.
Absolutely, and I think no other precinct is gentrified as much as Colaba. And we keep talking about Brooklyn and Barcelona, etc. But I think if someone does a research on the gentrification that Colaba has gone through, and all of you have been involved in it at some point of time, and you realize that it's quite incredible the way Colaba has.
Can I say one
sure.
thing? And this is something that someone told me. I don't know how far it's true, but during the partition, a lot of the Sindhi community came to Colaba, right? And of course, it's
called Little Sindh because you have, of course, it's because you have a lot of Sindhis, and also because you have
all in the audience also.
and all the foods there, which is all the best Sindhi food in Bombay is where you'll get it.
But they took over all the shops,
yes,
and they'd all live together in a community till one managed to get out. And I thought that was fantastic, that it was. And you look down the road, even in our building. We have a lot of the shops that are owned by them. So it was a wonderful story that they said. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Gauri, you transitioned from a career in tax consulting to become a trailblazer in Mumbai's fine dining scene, starting with the table in Colaba. Similarly, Max Street restaurants have now become a city-wide sensation. What drew you to Colaba as the location of your fine dine restaurant, and how have they influenced the neighborhood's culture and character? You have a lot of visiting chefs. Could you share your thoughts on the cultural exchange that takes place here through food? I remember the last one you took to Sassoon Docks.
Yes. So I have a very different experience of Sassoon Docks. It's where I think the table has evolved as the menu at the table has evolved as one that really celebrates the seafood that comes right into Colaba. And I had a very different avatar before I got into food. I trained as a lawyer and a chartered accountant, and it really helps when you're when you're trying to sell food to know numbers. But you know, my sort of memory, or my first association or memory with Colaba and Sassoon Docks is actually my dad used to take friends on this amazing tour of Sassoon Docks, and it was his thing. It was to take visitors, you know, coming from all over the world to Sassoon Docks. And I remember my mother used to make him take his shoes off outside the house before he entered. But when I used to go with him, the best bit, and I know you've kind of captured this in some of the art on the walls of the building, but he always got yelled at by these like really big ladies sitting there because they were like, either you buy right now or get out of my way. And of course he always bought, and you know, the whole thing of like ice gushing down from into the boats, and you know, so it's just and it's sort of for me come full circle because now we get so much of our sort of raw ingredient from there. So it's of course something that we have to take all our chefs to. So we have this very standard thing. If we can, we put them up at the yacht club, and you know, with a room overlooking the gateway, and then take them first thing in the morning to Sassoon Docks, followed by Keema Pao at Olympia. So it's like it's this routine that, you know, if you're going to shock them hard when they come to the city for the first time, and but it really gets the juices flowing like nothing, and the inspiration going. So that's our little insight into Colaba for them.
Lovely. Yeah. That's the best place to get it. Arjun Start is known for inviting artists from all over the world and their collaboration with local artists. Please share some details about your latest art project, the mural by Gangubai and Merrill from Italy, which the attendees will be experiencing this Saturday when we go on a walk. So we're going to end with the mural.
I think you won't be able to see the mural, but you'll be seeing other things planned. The mural will start on the 1st of December. Just wanted to clarify that. Okay. And it'll be for 15 days. But yeah, this is a very exciting collaboration. Miriam Baju is an Aboriginal Australian artist, and Gangubai is from Bhopal, and she works on Bhil art. Firstly, the importance of this conversation, this collaboration is to try to find and try to get a response from an artist. So initially, when we started this kind of process, which is approximately about 8 or 9 months ago, we were not getting responses from Aboriginal Australian artists, and of course we tried. But finally, we got a response from Miriam Baju, and you know, that's a part of the process as well, right? That's what it is all about. We set out to do something, and then because of the fact that we don't get a response, because these artists are in deserts of Australia, they are not connected as we are. A lot of them are not, but a few are. And Miriam, some way or the other, or her team wrote back. And that was a very, very important part. That starts the collaboration. And, you know, I mean, that's where we kind of started. We knew we wanted to work with an artist, or at least have some similarities between the two artists, the Indian artists as well as the Aboriginal artists. The good part is, and what we found, the commonality was that they both would work with dots. And that's where we kind of start the curation process. And their practices, in terms of, while they were very different, but from a visual point of view, have similarities, both Bhil art as well as what Miriam was doing. While the Bhil art would kind of focus a little bit more on the flora, fauna, there's always a deer for some reason, and just general kind of, like I said, flora, fauna. Miriam's work was similar in that nature, but it had a kingfisher. And these are all these are all somewhere or the other how they've grown up, or the kind of tales they've been told, right? And what we are kind of, what they're bringing back. But this also kind of brought in a question that how disconnected we are from their reality. That there was no way of making contact. Miriam does speak a little bit of English, but she needs a chaperone. She's an elderly lady, as well as Gangubai. They both are elderly ladies. She has a very strong accent, so you can't understand even the English she may speak. We so far have changed 3 translators, not changed, but we have gotten, we've got evolving people who are working with us from the Aboriginal side. We started with a person called Poppy, then we went to Sarah, and now we have Mark who's going to come to India. And there's Subhash, who is the son of Gangubai, who can't speak English, but he can kind of express what she's saying, and we can gather how this collaboration will work. And now it's become a very interesting aspect because they see each other online, right? And these both are, the beautiful part is they both are ladies, they both are probably over 60s. Gangubai has done some wall work, some mural work, while Miriam has never sat on a lift. She's only worked on canvases or smaller objects. And when they come together, there's a beautiful interaction. There's a little bit of, that awkwardness has become a friendly, like kind of I know you and we both know where we come from, kind of a situation. And there's some sort of a bond which has been forming because we obviously have often video calls. So that's where we are at this point. The collaboration is, let's see what form and shape it takes. It's going to be 14 days. It's going to be interesting because we don't know if they're going to be able to sit on that lift, even though the wall is not very high, it's about 30 feet. How will they react? What will be the final output? And I think that's more or less what we're looking for. So it's the unexpected, which is beautiful in this collaboration. And over the years, START has kind of championed the fact that we need to work on an interdisciplinary approach. It's tougher for us to do that, but it's really important. How do we connect the indigenous and the Aboriginal together, and how do we kind of bring this together? And really thankful for the Australian consulate to be kind of helping us with this process.
So I think Saturday is going to be fun because we'll all get to see it.
Correct. You'll get to see the work
other
absolutely.
parts of the festival.
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask all of you all a quick rapid fire question. We want to know, why is Colaba the coolest, and anyone can go for it. Why is Colaba the coolest precincts? So we don't want you to think too much. We just want something to come up and tell us why you all feel it is the coolest precinct.
Sasan Dock for me.
Because it's truly a patchwork of communities, languages, cultures that thrive, and it always adjusts and makes space for everyone.
A melting pot.
Oh, I was just moving.
It's the most sustainable for your seafood that you're going to get at all the restaurants. The shortest distance that your food has traveled.
I think it has everything because from where I live, within 1 kilometer, except perhaps you may not be able to buy an elephant or an ox, but everything else is available. Everything.
This is true. This is so true. And I think everyone looks out for each other. I think that's important also in Colaba, I mean, if you've been living there for a while, everybody knows you. If you want something, if you're in trouble, especially on 26/11, everybody galvanized and got together. And, it was a very, very, you felt safe being there despite the fact that there was so much happening out there as well.
Fantastic. We've got some time for a few question and answers.
One aspect was probably not covered were these clubs in Colaba. There's so many of them, and there was no conversation on that.
The social part of it. Does anyone want to talk about the clubs?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, yeah, like you said, it's the social aspect. Of course, the yacht club was all about sailing. The radio club, I think, is where they had the first radio station. Yeah, so I think it was, like you said, it's about community. I think you need to do a theatre club, which will, exactly.
The thing is that we do a lot of theatre workshops at the clubs to be able to get the members in and, engage. I'm not saying in Colaba, but definitely on value building, definitely on environmental issues, etc., which affect everybody around. So, yeah, I think so.
Wasn't there a hotel called Green's Hotel?
Yes.
Nobody's mentioned that. I seem to remember that so clearly from my...
It was right next to the Taj. And it was very famous for the dance of the seven whales.
They served fish for breakfast where there was always a large line that was there. But they should have kept it. Otherwise, they built that structure there. Yeah. I shouldn't say much. I'll keep going on.
Like one thing which y'all could have said more about is like how the name changed during like reclamation. How like in Shabnam Meenwala's book it was like the Rabji Street in Six Filmmakers of the Rabji Street and like how the name changed throughout like the years.
The name of the building? Yeah. So I guess as people evolve and things evolve, people try to change names. There's a fantastic book out there called Street Names of Mumbai, I think. And street names.
It's there for sale there, actually.
Yeah. And it's really interesting to see how the names have changed and how, to me at least, many of the original names made a lot more sense than the names today. You knock out Ormiston Road. You think it's the British, but he was one of the people who built one of the lighthouses. There was a reason for Ormiston Road to be sitting there in Colaba. So we do these things with these are knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah.
Another aspect that Colaba is famous for, so to speak, are the several schools, Campion and St. Anne's, Fort Convent. We've grown up, we've had Scholar, we've had friends, we've had relationships, so that's very integral to this place.
Yeah, but we could go on and on. I mean, there's so much to it. I think after all this, Colaba deserves a huge round of applause.
That's what I think. Yeah, I think for Asad, that's why it's the coolest place to be.
Yeah, actually, I was telling them earlier, Filter was to be a store. I don't think it's there, a local store. It had these t-shirts, only the cool kids live in Colaba. And I almost bought one, but I thought I'd be too cheesy. But thank you to our wonderful panel. I mean, to Vice Admiral I.C. Rao, Rael, Shabnam, Gauri, Arjun. And I was just sitting and I realized that at the last edition of Start, where Avid was curating all the programs, is where I met Nikhil for the first time, where he got him to do an Art Deco panel discussion. So I think this is an ecosystem that keeps on growing. Thank you to all our partners, the Goethe Institute, Kalagora Association, Start Walkitecture, and X and Zero. Thank you to Beyond, Jayashree, for, and hopefully this collaboration will continue in another location or avatar. We've got many, please don't forget to register for the walk on Saturday. We've got many programs coming up with Avid. We are partners with the Literature Live, which is going to be in its 15th edition. I'll be moderating a session there on Sousa. That's happening on Friday. Saturday, Sunday, Art Mumbai, which is something you must check out. Again, Avid is involved. And there are 2 sessions we're doing on AI and art, and also on soft power. Towards the end of the month, we have wonderful programs. We have a Puccini opera at the Opera House, and a Malcolm and collaboration, also with the Australians. On that note, thank you all for being here in such great numbers, and have a wonderful evening. Thanks again, panel.